Good afternoon, First Lutheran Church, Cincinnati. Pastoral Intern Tyler here with you today, this Christmas Eve. Today is, we're getting really ready for Christmas right now, and things seem a little different this year, as I'm sure many of you are aware. We have to do things differently. We can't necessarily gather with our friends and families. We're staying at home. And, to be honest, I'm thankful about some of that stuff. I don't feel the pressure of having to, cook an elaborate meal for 7 or 8 people, or have to dress up in some cases. But at the same time, I think it's important to recognize that there's a little bit of a loss this year of tradition. And I'm kind of reflecting a little bit on that today. So as I think about traditions, I wanted to share a few of my own traditions that my family shares on Christmas Eve. And I hope that you will share some of those traditions as well in the comments below. Feel free to let us know what are some special traditions that you have with your friends or family on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day or this time of the year. We love to see some of those. To talk a little bit about some of mine, the things that I remember fondly. I can't quite gather with my family this year. They live in Texas. But what we would do growing up every year is we would go to my grandmother and grandfather's house on Christmas Eve for a Christmas lunch. And it was usually this big elaborate holiday meal. We had turkey and ham and sausage for all of the meats, and then there were a number of casseroles and dressing, pies and cookies and all kinds of things, and it was a wonderful time to gather together together with my family. But after we would finish eating, we would kind of sit around the living room and we'd sing Christmas carols, and then Santa Claus would come to visit, which was always really exciting as a kid. So he'd have this little strap with bells, and he'd jingle them, and he'd knock on the door, and just the excitement of hearing that Santa Claus decided to take time out of his busy day to visit your house was just amazing. So that was a lot of fun. And then he'd come in, we'd sit on his lap, and we'd have all kinds of presents afterwards. This is really a great time to gather with my cousins and my aunts and uncles and grandparents and siblings. This was one of the things that we did every year without fail. Obviously this year that's not going to be the case, and that's a little tough for me, but this is also an opportunity for us to sort of figure out what traditions look like going forward. Lives change and logistics get a little more difficult, especially with people moving around the country and having families of their own. So that's kind of a tough thing to grasp, but we're working to figure out what new traditions we want to adopt. Some of the other things we would do on Christmas Eve is after this meal and visit with Santa Claus, we would get ready for church, and we would go into the building probably about an hour before service started, because it's one of the busiest services of the year. And we'd have to reserve two rows together, 2 pews together, so we could all sit together, and the cousins would sit together, and you'd have the adults would sit together, and most of the time we would be really happy to sing Christmas carols and hold our candles for Silent Night and play tic-tac-toe during the boring parts of the sermon, which I hope you don't do tomorrow. But anyway, that was some of the things that we really enjoyed doing. We would come back then, after service was over, we'd have another meal, usually leftovers or sandwiches. One year we had several dozen tamales, which if you've never had tamales for Christmas, I encourage you to try that out sometime. It's one of my favorite things to do, favorite meals that time of year. We'd eat all that together. Then the cousins would go upstairs, and we would rewrite the words to the 12 Days of Christmas to make fun of all of the adults downstairs. So it might be something like 8 o'clock is Popol's nap time. We would have 5 crazy Moquins. We have 5 in our family, and so that was 5 crazy Moquins. But we would rewrite for every single one of the days to make fun of the adults usually for something that happened that year. So that was a great tradition. And then of course, opening presents and having the wrapping paper snowball fights. Those are always a blast. One other tradition I remember too is when I would come home at the end of this, we would be able to open one present the night on Christmas Eve night in our own home before Santa Claus came. And it was usually a pair of pajama pants or something like that. I got these last year. These are some of my favorites because they've got little T-Rexes on them, so you can kind of see that there. So I love these. But as I think a little bit about this, about the traditions that we have and we hold so dear, it's a tough year for us. It really is. We have to change the way the things we're doing, but I think it also shows how valuable those relationships and those things that we hold dear to us are. One of the things that we do in our services on Christmas Eve, we do this every year. This is a tradition, typically for most churches, as we read the Christmas story, usually out of Luke chapter 2. And I've got my Bible here with me. And you'll hear this tomorrow, of course, but why not read it? Why not read it today as well, just to kind of get our thoughts and minds prepared for the season. This is Luke chapter 2. In those days, a decree went out from Emperor Augustus that all the world should be registered. This was the first registration, and was taken while Quirinius was governor of Syria. And all went to their own towns to be registered. Joseph also went from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to the city of David called Bethlehem, because he was descended from the house and family of David. He went to be registered with Mary, to whom he was engaged and who was expecting a child. And while they were there, the time came for her to deliver her child, and she gave birth to her firstborn son and wrapped him in bands of cloth and laid him in a manger, because there was no place for them in the inn. I'm going to stop there for now. We'll, of course, read the whole story tomorrow. But this is a really interesting story. Obviously, during this time of year, Christmas hasn't existed yet. But there were special traditions that, of course, people held. In this case, everything's disrupted. Joseph and Mary have to travel to Bethlehem, away from their homes, out of their comfort zone, away from the traditions and the comforting place of where their families and their friends are. So this is definitely a new and probably uncomfortable experience for them too. Something to reflect on. But the good thing is, this is not the end, and this year is not going to last forever, although sometimes it feels like it is. Things are going to get different. We will be able to gather again. We will be able to go into our churches and be able to hold our candles and sing Silent Night again. We'll be able to go and gather with our families and friends again. But I think we'll have a little bit more of, we'll be able to value those experiences a little more after a year like this. It's been tough, but that just shows how meaningful those experiences are to us. One of the things that I'm going to be doing today, hopefully after I finish sermon writing for tomorrow, is I'm going to bake some cookies, and so I'm looking for a good gingerbread recipe. So I'm going to be doing that today as kind of a tradition of our own. I love to just bake and cook at this time of year. It's a lot of fun, and so trying to explore that a little bit as a part of our new traditions. That's something that also Matt and I have to be aware of, because we're probably not going to be able to travel home very frequently going forward for Christmas, because we'll both be working. But that's okay. We get to form new traditions of our own that will be just as meaningful. Well, with that said, I hope that you will join me for a quick prayer and a couple of announcements afterwards. So, the Lord be with you. Let us pray. Gracious God, we thank you for the blessings in our life. We thank you for our friends and our families, for the traditions that you give and the meaning that they give to us as well. We thank you most especially for your Son, Jesus Christ, the ultimate gift above all others. We thank you that Jesus Christ didn't come as somebody that was powerful or far off and distant, and not relational. We thank you that Jesus Christ is somebody that looked in many ways like us and experienced the wide range of human emotions and human experiences that we do too. We ask that you be with us this holiday season, this Christmas season, and with our families and friends, especially those that we can't gather with. Help us to find comfort, and help us to once again be able to gather with them some point in the future, hopefully with the next Christmas season. All this we ask in your most holy and precious name. Amen. A few announcements. Thank you again for joining me today, but a few announcements I wanted to provide. So Christmas Eve service is tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Feel free to share with your family and friends, and if you go to our Facebook page and click the little share button, you'll also be able to, that'll also show up on your page so other people can see that too. Invite them to service if they don't have a service to attend. We would love to have them. We will be celebrating Holy Communion, so be sure to have your bread and your wine or whatever you have prepared for that. And we will also be singing Silent Night, so if you have a candle, bring a candle out for that point too. So we're trying to preserve a little bit of tradition in that service as much as we can, but of course we have to adapt. Next week, actually this Sunday I should say, is the first Sunday after Christmas, and instead of a typical worship service, the Synod of Southern Ohio has provided provided a recorded service that we're going to be utilizing for service. We'll still be gathering, we'll still have that opportunity to have fellowship and coffee and snacks afterwards, so feel free to stay for that, but we'll be watching this video together as well as to have the words on the screen, so hopefully you'll be able to follow along as well. So feel free to join us for that. That also said, after Christmas Eve, we will officially be closed, except for emergencies, of course. Feel free to contact us as need be, but the offices are officially closed until January 3rd, which is the second Sunday after Christmas. So just wanted to give you a heads up there. And with all of that, I hope to see you all tomorrow evening for our Christmas Eve service. Have a blessed rest of your day and holiday season. See you all later. Bye-bye.